So we are continuing our series on living out loud, the bold wisdom from the book of James. When we talk about living out loud, we are not talking about living obnoxiously. We're not talking about living ostentatiously, big word for calling attention to oneself. We're not talking about living arrogantly, that is, thinking I'm better than someone else. James is calling for us to live distinctly. It would be like walking into a room that has furnishings, but a piece of furniture stands out as distinct, but not dominating. And so James is calling for us to use bold wisdom to live distinctly. Now, he's writing to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered throughout the Roman Empire, as well as all of those Jesus followers, because they were enduring certain trials. And so he's writing to them to help them go through those trials. The first week I talked about enduring with joy. The second week, Eli talked about correlating faith and works. The third week, last week, Chad spoke about correlating mercy and judgment. And this week, I want to talk about enduring with joy, part 2, because I suspect that somebody here, either in person or online, may be going through trials or a trial. Now, if you're not going through a trial or don't anticipate ever going through a trial, then we'll wait for you. You can exit now. But if not, then maybe James has a word for you and for me. Are you going through any trials? I know I'm going through 3 trials even as we speak. And so I'm going to read this text, but every time I come to the word patience or a derivative of the word endurance or patience, I want you to say that word out loud, all right? If you're watching at home or on your mobile device, do the same thing. James 1 and James 5. Consider it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces and let have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him or her. Then James 5, therefore be, brothers and sisters, until the coming of the Lord. The farmer waits for the precious produce of the soil, being about it, until it gets the early and late rains. You too strengthen your hearts. Do not complain, brothers and sisters, against one another. Let me read that again. Do not complain, brothers and sisters, against one another. Wake up the person next to you. As an example, brothers and sisters, of suffering and take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. We count those blessed who endured. You have heard of Job and have seen the outcome of the Lord's dealings, that the Lord is full of compassion and is merciful. 8 times we have read just in these 2 chapters, endurance or patience, and it occurs several other times in the book of James. It's the theme of the book. One Greek word, hupomone, for those who take notes and like the language. It means to abide under pressure without giving up. To abide under pressure without giving up. That's endurance. That's patience. To abide under pressure, hold up under pressure without giving up, without cracking, without being frantic. You may stumble. Your knees may buckle from time to time. You may even give in and fall down. But endurance, hupomone, is I get up. So it is holding up under pressure without giving up. James says, you can't do this, I can't do this without joy. So he says this word to us: consider it joy, brothers and sisters, when you fall into various trials. Now, the English confuses us a bit when it says consider it all joy. The better translation is consider joy when you fall into various trials. And we've said trial has little to do sometimes with personal sins. It has everything to do with original sin. I could be minding my own business, and trials or tests or temptations and stress will just bump into me, come in my way, because we live in a fallen world. But when these things happen, I tend, humanly speaking, to consider sorrow, consider the negative. James says, flip the switch. What I want you to do to all of these who are suffering is consider joy. Think about joy. And what is joy? Joy is a relaxed mental attitude. Joy is a pleasant demeanor because of what I know. I know that God protects me and will provide for me. In fact, the Greek word joy comes from charismatic. It's charis or hadis in the Greek. It's where we get that word charismatic. It's the picture of a skipping lamb. Picture of a skipping lamb. Why does the lamb skip? Carefree, because they know that the shepherd will protect and provide, and therefore their disposition is not one of panic and frantic, but it is one of skipping, of joy. They know that the shepherd will protect them against wolves and wild animals. They know the shepherd will provide when they're hungry or when they're thirsty or when they need rest in a pasture, and that knowledge allows them to live with a relaxed mental attitude. And so it is, James says, this joy ought to be ours when we know that about the shepherd of the church. God has his hand on us, and when we go through trials, he'll protect us, he will provide for us, he has our back. You know, when I know someone has my back, it changes my attitude and my actions, and it emboldens me, it encourages me. Consider joy. Don't just consider sorrow. Consider joy. Let me illustrate this the way James does when he talks about various trials. I have some young HSM students who are going to help me. Hope Student Ministry. Come on up, if you would. Come on and help me illustrate this sermon. People will determine if this sermon is good by your illustration, okay? All right, the pressure's on you. If I can get my rope together. Each one of these students will represent some trial of life that we go through. If I can get the rope to work. Okay, we're going to start down here. Give me your name. No, Kylie, I want you to come to the back. All right, good. I want you, Naya, to come right here. And then I want you, is it Jaslyn? Okay, come right here. Okay, good. I want you right here. Good. Okay, here you go. Take that and go down to that organ. That Hammond. Go all the way down. Okay. Got it. All right. So that's Jaslyn. What do you have? What word do you have? Anybody ever gone through an unemployment trial? Yeah? Downsized the company, been fired twice like me. Whatever it is, it's a trial, right? It's a trial. They last short term, long term, could be an intermediate term. So she's representing the trial of unemployment. But James says it's not just one trial, trials. In the ancient world, Roman, when he was writing, 30 to 50% of people were unemployed. So these Jesus followers were going through that trial. Give me your name. Jaden. Go down there, Jaden. Anybody ever had money problems, financial stress? That's a trial. It doesn't just stop at one. James says you may have various trials. You ever heard the old adage, when it rained, my mama used to say, if it ain't one thing, yeah, y'all know something about trial. And then give me your name. Grant. Go down, Grant. Grant. Okay. Sickness, disease, minding my own business. It could be genetic. It's just in a broken world, sickness can be a trial. Here's another one. We don't know anything about that kind of trial. What do you have now? Weather can be a trial, a natural disaster. And it's just a trial. It's not just one trial. James says various trials. One person can go through more than one trial, because when it rains, sometimes and my mama used to say, if it ain't one thing. Isaac has relationships. Good. Anybody ever go through relationship stress? Trial. It could be romantic stress. It could be parental stress. It could be familial, other family member stress, friendship stress, relationships. People cause problems. Did y'all know that? In fact, if you're going to live successful in this world, you've got to have at least three things. One is patience with people. The second one is patience with people. And the third one is more important than the first two. You got it. Patience with people. Relationships can cause stress. And then, all right, now, y'all stay right there. I told her she represents everything not named on these placards. She is the unnamed stress, because some of our stresses are not even named here. Take it away. Go. Walk on past that. You see what these trials are doing to me? Yeah, stop. But here's what James says. James says this, Brother Rufus, consider joy. Flip the script. And rather than trials leading you, when you mix them with joy, guess what can happen? You turn around with joy, and now I lead them. That makes all the difference in the world. And eventually they drop off, because I'm looking at the pleasant benefits on the other side of the trial. If I believe God has my back, they don't have to lead me. I can lead them. Thank y'all. You may return. All right. Thank you. Good. Honestly, I've learned, and I'm learning in life, this bold wisdom of James. Human wisdom says, consider sorrow. The bold wisdom, divine wisdom of James says, if you're going through a trial, whatever it is right now, flip the switch. Consider joy. Consider the pleasant benefits God has on the other side, because he always has something up his sleeve that we don't even know about. So if I'm going to endure with joy, it takes these four things. I think you have them in your notes. One, I need to be praying consistently. Two, I need to be thinking biblically, not just humanly. Three, sometimes when I'm enduring with joy and trials, it means doing nothing. Sometimes I can't do anything, and it means doing nothing. Other times it means, lastly, working feverishly on whatever the situation happens to be. Let me repeat those. When I'm enduring with joy, with a relaxed mental attitude, with a disposition that is pleasant, not frantic, not fretting, because I know God has my back. Then I am praying consistently. I am thinking biblically. I am what? I'm what? And then when I'm not doing nothing, I am working feverishly on whatever the situation happens to be. And so James gives us these examples, and then I'll take my seat, my other seat. Endurance, unmixed with joy, will lead to regrets, doubts, and questions. If I'm enduring something right now and it's unmixed with joy, if I've not considered joy, if I'm not thinking about what's the pleasant benefit on the other side of whatever I'm going through, then it will lead to regrets, to doubts, and questions. The first time we looked at this passage a few weeks ago, we looked at Job. Job had lost everything. Trial after trial after trial after trial. He lost all of his financial resources, his entire family. He lost everything. And then this is what Job says at the end of chapter 1, when everything was lost in those trials. Naked I came into the world, naked I shall return. It was the Lord who gave it. The Lord is now taking it away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. But the trial lasted longer than Job anticipated. It kept on going. And by the time we get to chapter 3, Job is stumbling. He's buckling. He's giving in. And when he gave in, came regrets, doubts, questions. You know, sometimes when the trial first happens, some of us do well. But when they don't go away quickly, when God doesn't move on our timetable, then we start to give in. That's what happened to Job. Look at what Job 3:1 says. Then Job opened his mouth and what? The day he was born. The same man who said, blessed be the name of the Lord, began to buckle under this trial and cursed the day he was born. He said, I wish the day I was born would be lost forever. I wish the night they said, it's a boy, had never happened. I wish that day had remained dark. I wish God above had forgotten the day and not let any light shine on it. You ever been there? Back up against the wall at your wit's end? But we don't remember Job because he gave in. We remember Job because he got up. And he didn't give up. So here's the second thing about when I endure with joy, then I'm corrected by God's questions. I have some questions. But then if I am mixing with joy, if I'm considering joy, then I'm corrected by God's questions. So Job asked all of these questions. When we get to chapter 38, God said, Job, I got some questions for you. Can I read them? It's a longer passage than we normally read, but I believe it'll bless you if you hang in with me. Can I read them? I'm asking your permission because it's a long read. Can I read them? Here is Job 38. Then the Lord spoke to Job from a whirlwind and said, who is this ignorant person saying these foolish things? Prepare yourself for an attack. Get ready to answer the questions I will ask you. Job, where were you when I made the earth? If you were so smart, answer me. And who decided how big the earth should be? Who measured it with a measuring line? Job, what is the earth resting on? Who put the first stone in place when the morning stars sang together and the angels shouted for joy? Who closed the floodgates as the sea gushed from the womb? Who covered it with clouds and wrapped it in darkness? I set the limits of the sea and put it behind locked gates. I said to the sea, you can come this far, but no further. Can I stop and say that's what God says to trials? You come this far, but no further. This is where your proud ways will stop. Job, have you ever gone to the deepest parts of the sea? Have you ever walked on the ocean bottom? Rufus, has anyone shown you the gates to the world of the dead? Have you ever seen those gates that lead to the dark place of death? Do you really understand how big the earth is? Tell me if you know all this. Where does light come from? Where does darkness come from? Can you take them back to where they belong? Do you know how to get there? Surely you know these things since you are so old and wise. You were alive when I made them, weren't you? I love his sarcasm there. Kathy, have you ever gone to the place where the sun comes up? Where it makes the east wind blow over all the earth? Matt, does the rain have a father? Who produces the drops of dew? Does ice have a mother? Who gives birth to the frost? Can you tie up the Pleiades? Can you unfasten the belt of the Orion? These are constellations. Can you bring out the other constellations at the right times? Job, can you lead out the bear with its cubs? Jimmy, do you know the laws that control the sky? Chris, can you put each star in its place above the earth? Derek, can you shout at the clouds and command them to cover you with rain? Can you give a command to the lightning? Will it come to you and say, here we are, what do you want, sir? Will it go wherever you want it to go? What a mighty God we serve. But if you're enduring with joy, Job, who was buckling and giving up, got up. He didn't give up, and he was corrected by God's questions. Listen to what he said. Then Job answered the Lord, I know you can do everything. You make plans and nothing can change or stop them. You asked, who is this ignorant person saying these foolish things? I talked about things I did not understand. I talked about things too amazing for me to know. Job had no idea what was on the other side of the trials, and that thousands of years later we'd be talking about him and God using him as an example to embolden and encourage millions and millions of people. You ask me, listen and I will speak. I will ask you questions and you will answer me. In the past, I've heard you, Job said, but now I have seen you with my own eyes. How many of you have learned that trials make you see God with a different set of eyes? And I'm ashamed of myself. I'm so sorry. As I sit in these dust and ashes, still in pain, I promise to change my heart and my life. And then the Lord blessed Job with even more than he had in the beginning. I almost feel like preaching. Because you never know what God has up his sleeve on the other side of trial. And then lastly, endurance mixed with joy will cause us to work, to wait, and win in the end like the former. Let me repeat that. Endurance that's mixed with joy. I don't know what trial you're going through, but it'll cause us to work, to wait, and to win in the end like a farmer. Here's what James says. The farmer waits for the precious produce of the soil, being what? Patient about it, until it gets the early and the late rains. You too be, whatever you're going through, strengthen your hearts. Do not complain. Anybody here like potatoes? I know I do. Did you know it takes 3 to 4 months for a farmer to produce a potato that comes from the plant to your table? In that 3 or 4 months, he or she works and waits because their experience tells them that they will produce it in the end, and many of us are blessed because of it. Wait and work like the farmer when you're going through trials. Let me close with this wonderful story from a couple here in our church. Listen to Max and Natalie.
We knew right away when we got married, it was kind of our plan that we wanted to start a family, start trying, and we're able to conceive. And our daughter Miller is now, she just turned 5. When Miller was
about a year and a half.
About a year and a half, we started trying for number 2. And through that, we had a miscarriage. And so then we tried again a little later and had a second miscarriage. And at that point, both devastating losses, we really started to seek help from fertility specialists. And
she, after many tests that we had done, she said, you have a 1% chance of getting pregnant on your own. And I immediately looked at Max and I said, well, Jesus left the 99 to go after the 1. The month that we went in to go have an IUI, we were pregnant on our own, and that's where our rainbow baby Collins comes in.
And everything was going as planned and well up until about week 28. Mm-hmm.
We had just asked if we could have an ultrasound simply just to see her. That was when we got the devastating news that she had a severe condition and that this was really just by the grace of God that we even went in for an ultrasound that day.
And she was diagnosed with eye drops, which had a very poor prognosis. Once again, here we are finding ourselves really just down on our knees, praying, leaning into our faith, and just asking God really for a miracle at this point. We were able to deliver Collins, and unfortunately, after just a couple short hours, she had passed. We were able to hold her as her last breath, left her body.
We had the thought that we get to hold our daughter at the same time that Jesus is holding her, and that was just a very sweet moment. It just felt like not only was he holding her, but he was holding us as well. It's been a hard year. We're still in it. It's just now about a year since we got the news about Collins. Our marriage has been strengthened. Our faith has been strengthened. We struggled a little bit with, do we want to have more children? Do we maybe look at other opportunities? I think the answer was just to have faith over fear, and that he put this desire on our hearts to have more children, and we just had to have faith that that was his plan for us. And so we are expecting a little girl right now.
As we were thinking about names and just understanding and knowing how important that is, we decided to name her Lainey James. We just love that name, and we were just overcome with gratitude and optimism and excitement and faith and all the emotions.
I love what they posted. I was singing of the goodness of God. It's easy to sing of the goodness of God when things are going well, isn't it? But what about when the trial lingers on? What about when the verdict has not yet been rendered? Happy to report right now, there are 23 weeks. All is well to date. So we praise God and be praying for Max and Natalie. What about you? Where are you? Are you enduring a trial or trials of some kind? James says, consider joy. Let's pray together. Father, it takes a different kind of wisdom when it comes to trials and troubles and stress and tests and temptations than the world has. So thank you for James and the bold wisdom he gives us to remind us afresh. You don't have to consider sorrow, and sorrows do not have to lead you. You can flip the switch and think about joy, the pleasant benefits on the other side of trial, and you can actually lead them. So help us to reflect on what we know, internal knowledge and eternal knowledge that you provide and protect on earth as well as in eternity. And then help us to consider what you have in store on the other side of the trials we may be going through even right now. And so we ask that you would help us so that we will not have regrets and doubts and questions. And if we buckle like Job did and even fall, help us to get up and not give up. And then help us to mix endurance with joy and be corrected by your questions from your divine perspective. And like the farmer, help us to work and wait when necessary, because you have proven to us that we'll win in the end. So we bless your name, even when we're uncertain of what the outcome will be. For the sake of the kingdom and the glory of the High King, we do pray and praise you. Amen.
Thanks for joining us today. We love to pray for you and celebrate alongside you. Please share anything going on in your life with us at hopechurchmemphis.com/prayer and subscribe to the Hope Church Memphis YouTube channel to experience previous worship services and more. Have a great week.